in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm really excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Cheryl Rodness. She is the leader of Talent Enablement and Culture at Calix. Thank you so much for being here, Cheryl. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I identify with she and her. When I was younger, I had a lot of different ideas in my head of what I wanted to be. I thought at one point I wanted to join the Foreign Service because I loved travel and culture and people in general. And then I thought I was going to be a journalist and changed my mind after a couple of internships and found my way into marketing, which is something that I've been doing for most of my career and love. And taking that knowledge along with my love for people, I found myself recently in a role focused on culture.
Absolutely. I love that. So it seems like you really enjoy working with people and storytelling. How do you think your personal journey has really led you up until this point to be the leader of talent enablement and culture, specifically at Calix?
Well, as I said, I think it really comes from my overall curiosity about people. I've had the good fortune to travel to probably over 100 countries around the world and have expat assignments in Europe and in Japan and working with people all over the world. So taking that interest in how people interact and how cultures work differently, I think that's ultimately led me to my role here in culture at Calix and really being able to understand people deeply, having a curiosity in people and wanting to make all of their working experiences better.
Absolutely. And I'm sure every day has a lot of, tasks and activities and a lot of projects that you're working on to make that happen too in the workplace. And I have a couple of specific questions around company culture, but I always kind of like to ask folks, what's the next problem or current, situation you're trying to solve? What's taking up the most brain space?
Well, at Calix, our president has identified as culture and people as his number one priority for 2022. And so I spend a lot of my time thinking about culture. How do we ensure that the values of our company are instilled across all of our business units? How do I ensure that the people that we are hiring understand our culture and continue to live within it, breathe the values, and bring their own perspectives? I think about how do I bring forward more culturally sensitive projects and programs into the company to make everybody feel a greater sense of belonging and that their needs as an individual are also being met and they can understand their purpose at the company and in their lives working at Calix.
Yeah, I mean, having that be the number one kind of priority and initiative by a leader is really important. And you mentioned just making sure that people understand and can see the values throughout the organization. I want to ask how you kind of empower folks across the organization, no matter where they sit, to be really equity-driven leaders.
That's a great question. Calix is a really unique organization in that we are very open and we are not hugely hierarchical. You can easily pick up the phone and call our president or our CEO or use our platforms such as Chatter or even instant messaging to provide a thought or an idea. We have a leadership team that meets twice a year where we bring provocative ideas forward, where we like to talk about how we are encouraging our teams to be vocal, to state what's on their mind. We listen to them. We do a lot of listening through Glassdoor, through Comparably, and other third-party survey instruments to really understand as well what's happening with the people at the company and how we can improve upon it.
Yeah, I think that's good to highlight in terms of having different ways for people to really share their opinions as well, and really garner feedback, whether it's a one-on-one open door policy, or getting that feedback through other channels in a hybrid or remote first world as well. When you're thinking about how company culture is doing, what are qualitative or quantitative metrics that you look to say, okay, we are fostering a really great environment here?
Well, we believe strongly in the best places to work survey and comparably, and we take a look at what our scores are there all the time. And are we winning the awards for best place to work, for best CEO, for best leadership team, for best place for women, for diversity, for happiness? And we've been very fortunate that our employees rank us really high, and we look at those scores quite intensely. We also take a look at Glassdoor, and we take a look at how we're ranked there and the comments that come through there as well. So we're very much a data-driven organization, and we look to those statistics to help us be guided in terms of how we're doing. And then, absolutely qualitatively in comments that are coming through on chatter or big meetings that we have.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. I think being the best in those categories is really important too, and it's part of your employer brand as a company. What is the difference, in your opinion, between good and great, or as you put it, kind of best in terms of company culture? What are those like differentiators or just that turning point there?
Well, it's funny that you should actually bring up the phrase good to great, because that's a theme that's going across the organization this year. As a leadership team, we all read good to great, and we rallied behind that at our recent leadership team meeting. For us, good is doing the basics. For us, however, it's really about being great. How do we really show up every day? How do we recognize our people? How do we make sure that we deliver on our commitments to ourselves, to our employees, to our customers? So we take very simple things like you're asked to fill out a pulse survey. Well, good could be 70, 80% completion. Great for us is 99 to 100% completion. We really expect our teams to lean in, and we look at great as a way to really bring to life who we are and what we want to be.
Yeah, I think that is also important. I love that the theme good to great is really permeating throughout the organization as well. And kind of digging down deeper into who makes up the company culture. I read in your bio that one of your areas of expertise is really building successful intern programs.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about how you think about the goals for these programs, especially knowing that interns maybe potentially become employees?
So we have a couple of different goals around our intern program. And I'll start by saying we started with probably about 7 interns 3 years ago. We're 33 interns last year, and our target is above 50 this year. We believe strongly in feeding the professional development of students. So we look at it across our organization. But in terms of the goals, there are a couple of things we do. First of all, from an intern perspective, we send out a survey towards the end of their internship to understand, did they get out of it what they had hoped? What did they learn? What value did they see in it? Is this a place that they would recommend to their fellow students? Is this a place they'd like to return to? What is it that we could be doing differently that we can build on for each of our programs the following year? We take all of that information very seriously, and we do improve each year with their comments. The other thing that we do, though, is we also take a look at the interns from a 4-box perspective at the end of the internship. We take a look at how they have fit into our culture. How did they address our values or bring their values to life in their job? How did they connect with fellow employees? And we sort of look at the students from that perspective as well. So it's almost a 360 in some ways. And then we also take a look at conversion. So we are a smaller organization than most. We've got about 850 employees, but we look at the pipeline of students and say, who can we take from an internship and migrate those into being contractors through the school year if they want to work part-time? And then when they graduate, what percentage of those can we actually hire full-time to build our pipeline and our bench?
Mm-hmm. I think that is interesting to look at the professional development of the interns. It sounds like the internship program is definitely growing as well. And I kind of like what you said around connecting with current employees too and building those relationships as well. And part of that also is asking kind of if they would recommend the organization as a place to work or intern at as well, which goes to just this culture of listening and employee feedback management as a part of kind of building that culture. How do you see kind of the culture of trust and listening manifesting across the company today?
Well, at Calix, we have three core values. One is to know your purpose. And knowing your purpose means that you need to trust in what you're doing is the best for you, the best for your family, the best for the company, and the best for our customers. Our second value is really around communicate, collaborate, and create. So in order to do that, you really need to trust one another. We foster a huge environment for collaboration and innovation. And we communicate all the time. If you can't trust what's happening in that communication, then you can't move forward and innovate and grow as quickly and as rapidly as we are. And our third value to our values is really about we take care of our own. And that really is about a lot of trust. We ensure that as we've been going through the pandemic, that we've been taking care of one another. Our CEO picks up the phone and was calling people if someone from their family or themselves had fallen ill during COVID. When there have been brush fires in Southern California, we've been taking care of our own there as well. But there's just a lot of trust and camaraderie that's built into the organization. And people know that they can speak freely without any type of pushback or without any type of negative consideration. We're just a very open culture from that perspective.
And I think that's so important to intentionally foster as well. It doesn't just happen. And, having that trust really garners that feedback to make sure that you're promoting innovation, that people feel like they are supported inside and outside of work, like you were talking about as well. Can you share an example of a change to either a process, initiative, or strategy that happened at Calix because of employee feedback?
Sure, I can talk to a couple. Certainly over COVID, I think everybody knows that people have been working extraordinary number of hours under a lot of stress in a lot of different ways. And so with feedback from our employees that they were getting a little bit burnt out, we created what we call recharge days. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of companies were giving their employees a day off, but recharge days are a little bit different. It's not just a day off. It certainly can be, but it's a day where we explain that there will be no email sent. There are no Zoom calls. There are no external meetings, no internal meetings. The day is for you to choose to do what you want to do to recharge. So for many people, it's about taking that day off that's quiet and spending with their family or friends or loved ones, or going for a walk, doing what they need to do to personally recharge. For others of us, it can be about having some time to focus and get some really important work done that we don't necessarily have the time to do during the busyness of a day. For me, in fact, Recharge Day, which is held the Friday following our quarterly release, I took the day to very quietly work through a proposal that I'm working on for our 2022 development program. It was a very quiet day that I could work at my own pace, really think through, have no disturbances, and felt it was probably one of my most productive days in a long time. So for all of us, we took the feedback. People were burning out. They needed the time to think, to just recharge. And so that day is truly about doing what you want to do. Nobody dictates it. And it's not just, hey, here's another day off, because we have unlimited vacation time. If you need the day off, you take it. But this ensured that nobody was going to be distracted by emails, by personal messages, or anything else. It's your day to focus.
Yeah, I love that. Your data focus to really recharge, and the greatest gift you could give someone is time. So it sounds like that's a really great way that people can take what they need and come back recharged for the next day. That includes meetings and things like that. I know I've been asking a lot about the specific strategy and different ways that you've thought about kind of people practices right now, but I want to kind of ask, in your kind of experience as well, what are common mistakes you see companies making in their people or talent strategy? So not necessarily at Calix.
I think some of the common strategies are for people to deploy programs, but they don't necessarily always go back to their core values. They get the pulse, and that's always good. You're getting information from your employees, but you have to think about, how do those programs fit back into your company policies and strategies? For us, for instance, we take a look at the concept of community. And because we service a lot of rural North America, the community is really important to us. and the communities in which our people live in are really important. So for us, when we talk about we take care of our own, we launched a strategy around community volunteerism and community support, but it's from the bottom up, not from the top down. It's not dictated that this is something that you have to do, or here are specific support initiatives that you have to contribute to. We turn to the employees and say, take X number of personal volunteer days and go into your community, go into what matters to you, volunteer and support that time for things that are important to you. And it has to be local for you. It's not something that the company is going to do. And I think sometimes organizations get a little bit caught up in what are their programs? Do they align to the core values, or sometimes do they just serve the company?
Absolutely. It has to come back to that North Star, their foundation of why everyone's here and the values of the organization. I guess the flip side of that question would be, what are kind of must-haves people and talent leaders really need to incorporate in their strategy to be successful in the future, knowing what we know now, taking our learnings from the past 2 years and kind of moving forward?
I think there are a couple of things. I think one is authenticity. People connect with people. People work for people, not necessarily work for companies. And so if you bring your honest self to your team, it goes a lot further rather than just trying to bring a shallow sense of yourself to your customers and to your employees. I think the other thing too, in today's environment, it's to really recognize unconscious bias and to be able to recognize, particularly when it comes to hiring, to look at the diverse pool out there, really stretch yourself, think about people and what they bring to the table, and not always hire someone that looks or sounds or acts like you. I think that that's something that a lot of people fall into. Understandably, we tend to connect with people like ourselves, but when it comes into hiring and building a truly diverse talent pool and building a company and a company of a broad culture, you need to take a look at all people and what do people bring to the table that challenges you, that makes you think differently, that stretches you, stretches your team.
Absolutely. I think people can also tell whether you're being authentic or not. And there's so much research out there that says once you feel like authentically connected to your team, and especially your manager and the folks you work with the day to day, there's more likely you're going to stay and find fulfillment in the work you're doing as well. Cheryl, is there anything that I didn't ask in our conversation that you want to share with folks who are listening to this podcast, or maybe, one or two key takeaways you want to underscore and make sure that they bring with them?
I think the one thing I would say is we all have read about and know about the idea of the great resignation. If you build a great company where people are listening from the top down and the bottom up, you're really taking that input and you're trying to make your culture a better place for everybody. We will all succeed. People are leaving because they feel that they're not being valued, they're not being heard. Um, it's not because there's necessarily the grass is greener somewhere else or it's a better job. It's all about people. And I think we've all learned that going through COVID and, having to realize how all of our lives are changing and work life is so interconnected now that I would just encourage people, across the spectrum in terms of job roles and and functions. Listen to your teams, be authentic with your teams, make them know that they're valued and what they bring to the table is of value to the company.
Absolutely. People are your greatest asset, and you want to make sure that they feel seen and heard. And with all of the talk around the great resignation, too, and thinking and reflecting about work, I think that's an important call to action. Cheryl, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture today.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the time together.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening at AllVoices, we really believe in that employee feedback management as a requirement for the company to succeed on a whole. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.